I came home and found a bright yellow envelope taped to my door. $500 a day for building a fence. On land, I fought to buy. On soil, I bled to protect. I wasn't even part of their HOA. But that didn't stop her. Karen sent letters, fines, strangers with clipboards. Then the eggs came, then the threats. But she forgot one thing. I already lost everything once, and this time, I wasn't going down easy. So I fought back. I found the proof. I exposed the lies. And the day she stepped down in silence was the day I reclaimed my life. My name is Jack Emerson. I'm 45 years old, and before all of this, I thought I had life pretty well figured out. I used to manage commercial construction projects, high-rises, condos, office parks. I loved the structure, the rhythm, the sense of progress. I was good at it. For 15 years, I built things, tangible things. But life? Life has a way of tearing down what you build when you least expect it. In 2020, my company downsized. They let go of half the staff in one brutal Friday morning meeting. I walked out of that glass tower holding a cardboard box with my nameplate, a stress ball, and a few framed photos. That's the last time I ever stepped into a job I thought would carry me to retirement. My wife didn't handle it well. We'd been drifting already, and losing my job just pushed us over the edge. Arguments replaced conversations. I became quieter. She became distant. By the end of the year, she was gone. Took the dog, Buddy, our golden retriever, and left a note saying she needed stability. I guess I did too, but at that point, I didn't even know what that looked like. What followed was the hardest stretch of my life. I slept on friends' couches, crashed at my brother's house, rented a damp basement apartment with mold in the walls and a broken heater. I took whatever work I could get, moving jobs, landscaping, handyman gigs, survival mode. Every day was just about making it to the next. There were nights I'd sit in my car, windows fogged up, wondering how the hell it all fell apart so fast. I thought about giving up more than once, but I didn't. Something deep inside me, maybe stubbornness, maybe pride, refused to let go. I started walking in the mornings, saved every penny I could. I stopped drinking. And eventually, after 2 long years of scraping and clawing, I found a house I could afford. It was outside a suburban neighborhood called Lakeview, just beyond the reach of the HOA. I made damn sure of that. It wasn't perfect. The siding was warped, the roof needed patching, and the backyard looked like a jungle. But it was mine. And the land, nearly an acre, backed up to a public walking trail. Peaceful, quiet, full of possibility. Gardening became my therapy. Every morning at dawn, I'd slide open the creaky back door, the cold air biting my face, and step barefoot into the dew-soaked grass. I'd brew black coffee in a dented tin pot and sip it while standing knee-deep in overgrown weeds. I cleared the land with my own hands, planted vegetables, wildflowers, and built raised beds out of reclaimed wood. The smell of damp soil became my daily prayer. I started to feel normal again. And then came Karen Bishop, president of the Lakeview HOA. Picture this, early 60s, a platinum blonde bob so stiff it could stop bullets, always dressed in tailored khakis and pastel sweaters like she was going golfing, but never did. She had the posture of someone who believed in superiority and the smile of someone who never meant it. She didn't just walk, she inspected. She didn't just talk, she made proclamations. I first saw her from a distance, standing rigid on the trail that bordered my property, sunglasses reflecting the morning sun like a hawk scanning for prey. She didn't wave, she didn't smile, just stared, arms crossed, judging. A few days later, I saw her again, this time with 2 other women in tennis skirts. They stopped, whispering, pointing at my newly installed fence posts like they'd discovered a crime scene. I was too tired to care. I figured they were just bored retirees with too much time on their hands. But I was wrong. Karen wasn't just bored. She was territorial. She believed in order. To her, communities weren't just places to live. They were ecosystems of rules, control, and appearances. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was building a kingdom. And she was queen. And me? I was the outsider, the rogue, the threat. Single man, no family, no welcome committee, building a fence without permission. She saw it as a direct challenge to her authority. The first time she spoke to me, it wasn't a greeting. It was a warning. "Morning," I said, walking past her on the trail one Tuesday. She didn't respond, just looked me over, then said, "You're the one putting up the fence?" I nodded. "Yup, just marking the property line. Had a surveyor out last week." She pursed her lips. "We'll see about that." And then she walked away. I remember standing there for a moment, shovel in hand, heart thudding in my chest. Something about the way she said it. It wasn't curiosity. It was a threat wrapped in a smile. I should have known right then. But I was too focused on healing, on building, on finally getting my life back. Karen saw all of that, and she hated it, because it wasn't hers to control. And when she came for me, with letters, with fines, with people sent to watch me, she thought I'd fold. She didn't realize I had already lost everything once, and I wasn't going to lose it again. Not to her, not to anyone. The fence went up on a Wednesday, nothing flashy. Just a clean cedar picket design, 6 feet tall, stretching along the back of my property near the walking trail. The surveyor I hired had marked every inch of the boundary. I made sure we stayed inside my property line. Not one board touched public land. And yet, 2 days later, I came home from a supply run and saw the envelope, taped to my front door. Bright yellow, the kind of color that screams, "You're in trouble." Inside was a formal letter from the Lakeview HOA. The header looked like it came from a courtroom, not a suburban volunteer committee. Bold font, legal jargon. The words "unlawful obstruction" and "community access violation" jumped off the page. They claimed I had blocked a historical easement used by residents to access the public walking trail. The letter demanded I remove the fence within 30 days or face a fine of $500 per day. Not a typo, $500 per day. But here's the kicker. I didn't live in the HOA. I read the letter 3 times thinking it had to be a mistake. I had gone out of my way to not buy into an HOA community. My deed, my survey, even the real estate contract confirmed it. Still, I figured maybe they mixed up addresses or just didn't realize I wasn't one of their own. So, I wrote a short, polite note explaining the mistake. Attached a copy of the survey. Sent it back to the address on the letterhead. The next morning, a new envelope. This one was pink and angrier. It accused me of being deliberately evasive and warned that if I failed to comply with the original order, I'd be reported to municipal code enforcement. They claimed my address was inside their boundaries and that any denial was potential fraud. Then came the visit. I was trimming the front hedge when I saw the beige Lexus pull up. Karen stepped out like she was walking into court, not my driveway, clipboard in hand, designer sunglasses, an expression like she'd just smelled something rotten. "Mr. Emerson," she said flatly. "Karen," I nodded, already bracing myself. "I'm here to inform you in person that your structure is in violation of Lakeview HOA's easement rights." "I'm not part of Lakeview HOA." "Yes, you are. Your property borders ours. Therefore, you're subject to shared use regulations." "That's not how laws work." She smiled, that smug, icy smile I was beginning to hate. "This will escalate. I suggest you avoid unnecessary consequences." "I had the land professionally surveyed. The fence is legal. My house isn't under your jurisdiction. I think you'll find our interpretation differs. Good day." She handed me another letter, then walked off, heels clicking like a metronome of menace. That night I sat at the edge of my bed, unopened letters scattered across the kitchen table. I hadn't eaten. My stomach was tight, my chest heavier than usual. I used to manage million-dollar projects. Now I was sitting in silence, wondering if I'd lose everything over a damn fence. A few days later, I watched from my window as Karen berated a teenage boy for skateboarding near the trail. She followed him, phone in hand, shouting something about reckless endangerment. The boy looked terrified. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules. It was about dominance. Then another visitor came. A man named Richie, mid-50s, sunburnt forehead, too tight polo shirt. He introduced himself as a Lakeview HOA board member. Said he was there to observe and document. Without asking, he walked onto my lawn and started taking photos of my fence from every angle. "You're trespassing," I called out. He ignored me. I said, "Off my property. Now." Richie finally turned and muttered, "You're not helping yourself." Then he left. That night, another letter, another fine. The daily penalties had begun. $500 a day. Day after day, the envelopes came. Yellow, pink, white, each one more aggressive than the last. By the end of week 2, they claimed I owed over $5,000. Then someone left a flyer in my mailbox, an anonymous notice calling me a public hazard who was blocking safe pedestrian access. Neighbors started acting differently, cold, distant. A couple who used to wave now crossed the street when I came outside. It was like I'd been blacklisted. One morning, I walked out to find tire tracks ripped across my front lawn. Deep ones, deliberate, a message. Another day, someone threw eggs at my side wall. 6 of them, smashed and sliding slowly in the sun. I filed a police report. The officer sighed. "Civil matter," he said. "You'll want to take this up with a lawyer." I called the county planning office again. They confirmed, in writing, I wasn't under Lakeview HOA jurisdiction, but that didn't stop the letters. "They're allowed to contact residents," the clerk said, "even if they're incorrect." Karen knew exactly how to exploit the cracks in the system, but I wasn't the same man I was 2 years ago. I called the surveyor, had him pull every document, every plat map, every time-stamped signature. I collected a binder thicker than a phone book, and I started keeping my own log. Dates, times, photos, video, every time someone stepped on my lawn, every letter, every incident. One night, while reviewing my notes, I looked in the mirror. Tired eyes, grit in my jaw. That was the moment I decided I'm not going to bend, not again. Because now I wasn't just defending a fence, I was defending my right to exist without fear. And Karen? Karen was about to find out what happens when you push a man who's already lost everything and has nothing left to lose. When I finally made the call to the lawyer, I didn't know if it would lead anywhere. I wasn't rich, didn't have endless funds to burn, and I'd already spent most of my savings just getting the house in shape. But enough was enough. The first 3 lawyers I contacted either brushed me off or stopped responding after they heard the word HOA. One even laughed. "They're untouchable, man. Sorry." But then came Elise Calder, real estate and civil law attorney, recommended by a guy I met doing volunteer cleanup work for a community garden. She picked up on the second ring. She was direct, professional, no nonsense. I explained everything, the fence, the letters, the fake fines, the harassment. She didn't interrupt. When I finally paused, expecting skepticism, she just said, "Mr. Emerson, if what you're telling me is true, they've crossed several legal lines, and I don't let bullies get away with this crap." I sent her the binder, photos, letters, the surveyor's full report, the logbook. Elise called me back the next day. "They're bluffing, completely. The HOA has no jurisdiction. But here's the thing, they knew that before they ever contacted you. That makes this harassment, plain and simple." She didn't wait. First, she filed a cease and desist, certified letter, process server. It included the full legal documentation, my survey, the county plat maps, and a notarized letter from the planning office confirming I wasn't under Lakeview's jurisdiction. Then came Phase 2, a formal demand for damages, harassment, trespassing, emotional distress, attempted defamation, and full reimbursement for every alleged fine. Elise didn't pull punches. The HOA said nothing, for days, until Karen came back. It was early evening. I was in the yard watering the pepper plants when her Lexus rolled up slowly. She stepped out without a clipboard this time. No sunglasses. Her posture was different, not arrogant, guarded. "Mr. Emerson," she said, voice thinner than usual, "is this really necessary?" "I'd ask you the same thing," I said, not even pausing the hose. "You don't understand what you're starting." "No, Karen. You don't understand what you started." Her face tightened. She opened her mouth like she had more to say, but no words came. Then she turned and walked away. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, Elise got a settlement offer from the HOA's attorney. They agreed to drop all complaints and fines if I tore down the fence. I laughed when she read it to me. "Tell them the fence stays," I said, "or we go to court." That's when the cracks started to show. A neighbor, Beth, contacted me discreetly. She said she was done staying quiet. She handed me a sealed envelope late one night in the parking lot of the grocery store. Inside were internal HOA emails, screenshots, meeting minutes. All of them showed one thing. They knew my property was outside the HOA. They fined me anyway. One email from Karen read, "Even if he's technically out, pressure might work. People like that usually fold." We added that to the file. With that evidence, Elise escalated. She filed a formal complaint with the state HOA Oversight Board and included every piece of evidence we had. The response was swift. The HOA caved. They paid every dollar Elise asked for. I received a formal notarized apology signed by the board. Karen was removed as president. 3 other members resigned. Elise called me after everything was settled. "We could push for more if you want. Public hearing, civil court, go scorched earth." But I didn't need more. I needed peace. The letters stopped. The stares faded. One by one, neighbors started speaking again. A few apologized. Others just nodded in silence, guilt in their eyes. And Karen still lives nearby, I think. But she's disappeared. I haven't seen her since. Last week, I installed solar lights along the fence and added a small sign, "Private property, surveyed and protected." The garden's thriving. Tomatoes, peppers, sunflowers tall enough to cast shade over my whole deck. I sit out there some evenings, beer in hand, boots up, letting the silence settle. And I think about what it took to win. Not just against Karen, but against the part of myself that almost gave in. For the first time in years, I look around and feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Home. Because I didn't just protect a fence, I reclaimed my life. So if you're ever up against someone like Karen, someone who hides behind rules to control you, just remember, silence invites control, resistance builds freedom, and if they push you to the edge, push back, hard. It's been half a year since the showdown with the Lakeview HOA, since I stood up to Karen and everything she represented, and life, it's different now, peaceful. 6 months ago, I was a man sitting alone at my kitchen table, staring down at a pile of envelopes filled with threats, violations, and legal jargon I could barely process. I hadn't slept through a full night in weeks. I was watching my bank balance drop while the fines rose, wondering which would run out first, my money or my will. Even my dreams were filled with HOA notices and banging on the front door. I felt like I was living under siege in my own home. Now, I'm planting marigolds with a little girl from 3 houses down, laughing as she gets more dirt on her overalls than into the pot. I haven't heard the word violation in 6 months. It's like a ghost that finally left the room. It's hard to explain how powerful it feels to just exist again, without someone hovering over you with a rule book and a clipboard. My mornings are slow and sacred. I wake up before the sun, brew strong black coffee in my old tin percolator, and step out into the yard barefoot. The dew on the grass chills my toes, and that small sting reminds me, this land is mine. No one can take that away from me again. I walk through rows of thriving tomatoes, run my hands over the rough bark of my apple tree saplings, check on the compost bin, and nod to the sunflowers that now stretch over 8 feet tall. They cast long, gentle shadows over the fence that still stands, untouched, unchallenged, and more symbolic than ever. People wave again, not all of them, Some still avert their eyes, but many do. Some call out good morning from across the trail. A few bring seedlings or clippings and ask if I have room in the soil. I always do. One neighbor dropped off a tray of basil starts and said, "Figured you'd give them a better shot than I could." That small act carried more weight than they probably knew. It wasn't just about the herbs. It was a quiet acknowledgement. A form of healing. The neighborhood kids took it upon themselves to make signs for the trail entrance, cheerful, homemade things on scraps of wood and cardboard that say, "Be kind," "Respect the roots," and "Take only memories, leave only footprints." Bright colors. Finger-painted letters. Imperfect and absolutely beautiful. No one has torn them down, not a single one. That alone speaks volumes about how far this neighborhood has come. Beth, the neighbor who exposed the truth and helped bring light into the darkness, now serves on the new HOA board. She tells me they've rewritten nearly half the bylaws. Community meetings are public now, held in the evenings when working families can actually attend. Notices are no longer threatening. Decisions are discussed, not dictated. And for the first time in years, the board feels human again. The letters they send out now? Reasonable, respectful, informative, and none of them have my name on them. Still, from time to time, I get a silent nod from a passing neighbor, one that says, "We remember," a kind of unspoken solidarity. I was the one who went first, the one who took the hit so others wouldn't have to. A few days ago, a little boy on a red scooter skidded to a stop in front of my gate. He couldn't have been older than 8. Freckles across his nose, grass-stained knees. "Hey, mister," he said, catching his breath. "My mom says you're the guy who beat the mean fence lady." I laughed, really laughed, the kind that comes from your belly and leaves your ribs sore. "Something like that, kid." He looked up at the garden. "I want one like this someday." "Start with one plant," I told him. "That's how everything grows." As for Karen, I've heard she stepped down from the board entirely. Some say she still walks the neighborhood at dusk, alone, always on the sidewalk, never on the trail. No clipboard, no sunglasses, just a quiet shadow of who she used to be. I haven't seen her since the day she walked away from my fence without another word. And honestly, that silence, that absence, has been the sweetest part of all. I'm finally doing something I never had time or clarity for before. Designing small garden spaces for others, families, veterans, couples looking for calm, elderly folks tired of staring at empty yards. I walk with them, listen to what they imagine, and help bring it to life with my hands. It's not a full business, not yet, but it feels like purpose. Real, dirt under your fingernails purpose. The kind of work that feeds the soul. Sometimes, I even work for free. Because I remember what it feels like to need peace and not know where to begin. The fence is still there. The same boards, the same nails. Weathered now, a little grayer from sun and rain. Moss is beginning to grow along the bottom edge in the shadier spots. A few neighbors helped me stain it last month. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to, because it mattered. Funny how a simple fence became a line in the sand. For them, it was an inconvenience. For Karen, it was an insult. For me, it was a beginning, a wall that became a shield, and then a foundation. It taught me something I hadn't known before. You don't have to be loud to take a stand. Sometimes a nail, a plank, and a quiet refusal are more powerful than shouting. I keep a copy of that last pink envelope in a drawer right next to the court settlement letter. Not as a grudge, just a reminder. That even when you're outnumbered, overwhelmed, and nearly broken, you're not powerless. You're never powerless. The garden is thriving. The trail is quiet. The air smells like rosemary and pine mulch. The sky is wide and open. And I found something I didn't know I was missing all along, a life that no one else owns. Because peace, real peace, isn't given. It's earned. And in a world that tells you to keep your head down, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is plant your feet and grow.